So welcome everyone to the launch of the 2025 Asia Pacific SDG Progress Report. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone here in person, as well as those that are connected online via Zoom. This report tries to address a few questions that are: how is Asia Pacific region progressing on the SDGs compared to the world? Do official statistics provide enough evidence to implement the SDGs for all people everywhere? What role can communities and citizens play in closing the evidence gap for the SDGs? So, our team from the Statistics Division of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific delve into these questions and explore them for this year's report. While we celebrate regional achievements and progress on the SDGs, this year's report also shows examples of how local communities and organizations working with the grassroots can bridge the evidence gap and take meaningful action towards propelling us to the 2030 targets. We also tried to investigate how we can leave no one behind by counting everyone with our data. So joining us to present the key findings from the report are Ms. Lin Yang, Deputy Executive Secretary of ESCAP, Ms. Rachel Bevan, ESCAP's Director of Statistics Division, and Mr. Armand Bidar-Bahnia, Head of the Statistical Data Management Unit of ESCAP. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Ms. Lin Yang for her opening remarks. Please.
Do I need to turn it on? You can hear me, right? Okay, thank you. Good morning, distinguished guests and colleagues. It's so good to see such a full room. That means SDG progress, not the report itself, but the SDG acceleration and implementation really gains the attention. It's right timing. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of the Asian Pacific SDG Progress Report 2025, engaging communities to close the evidence gap. This year's report is particularly significant. We can't say every year is significant, but this year indeed is significant. I will share a few reasons. First, it provides a comprehensive update on our region's progress towards the 17 SDG goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. Second, as my colleague Diane just mentioned, for the first time, it compares regional progresses against the global progress. Third, it highlights an innovative approach to addressing the data gap that leave many of our most vulnerable populations invisible in official statistics. That is why you see the theme this year, engaging communities to close the evidence gap. As we all know, reliable granular data is crucial for effective policymaking. Yet data gaps persist, particularly on groups in the most disadvantaged situation. This year's report highlights several innovative ways to engage with the communities and the citizens, capturing the diverse experiences of these groups. Those approaches ensure that their voices are heard and their needs are addressed in implementation of the SDGs. Allow me to share some key findings from this year's report. First, the region has made substantial progress on innovation and infrastructure, Goal 9, and the good health and well-being, Goal 3. However, despite the strong performance across many SDGs compared to the global average, the Asia-Pacific region is falling behind in climate action, Goal 13. That is the number 2 point I would like to highlight. Immediate action must be taken on this goal. This is a reminder that without urgent and comprehensive efforts to address environmental sustainability, achieving progress towards the 2030 targets becomes even more challenging. Third, in positive news, availability of sufficient SDG data in the region has increased to 54%, up from 47% in 2021. Yet, despite this progress, data gaps persist in critical areas, particularly in gender equality, Goal 5, peace, justice, and strong institutions, Goal 16. Furthermore, there is still a lack of disaggregated data by migratory status, disability, sex, and location, which limits our ability to fully understand, address the diverse needs of populations. Fourth, the report emphasized the importance of partnerships between governments, development partners, and the local communities to address these data gaps. Achieving the SDG for everyone, everywhere, requires a transformative shift in how we approach data and the statistics. This means fostering strong political leadership, mobilizing investments, and strengthening partnerships across all sectors. At the most recent Committee on Statistics, statistical systems across Asia and the Pacific recognize the need to adopt a whole-of-society approach to advance statistics for the 2030 agenda. This collective vision is crucial if we are to meet the SDG targets and create a sustainable and equitable future for all. I would also like to recall that last year in September, the General Assembly has also adopted the Pact for the Future, which I briefed the colleagues in February, with the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations as annexed. While these outcome documents provide a framework for how to turbocharge SDG acceleration in the coming years, they also stress the importance of data and the statistics. Action 38 of the Pact seeks to harness technology and the data to mitigate risks, seize opportunities, act early, and manage uncertainties. The Global Digital Compact, the fourth objective, seeks to advance responsible, equitable, interoperable data governance approaches. Data is used not only to better inform the policy making, but also used to measure progress, to act on opportunities. This year in 2025, we will also have the opportunity to mobilize governments and the stakeholders through the fourth International Conference on Financing for Development, which will take place in Spain on 30 June to 3rd July, and the World Summit for Social Development, which will take place in Qatar on 4th to 6th November. Data will be crucial for those conferences to inform policymaking and the discussions. As part of the UN family, we look forward to working with the stakeholders in these global processes in not only advancing the SDGs, but also to promote a whole of government and a whole of society approach in closing the data gap that still exists. Before closing, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our partners in the system, as well as civil society organizations who have contributed to this report. I would like also thank the team led by Rachel, Aman, and Dayan for their tireless efforts in putting together this report. I thank you all. And with this, I would like to officially launch the Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report 2025.
The story of Asia and the Pacific is one of striking contrasts, of immense potential alongside pressing challenges. From rapidly growing cities to remote villages, millions are striving for a better future, but time is running out. Progress toward the 17 Sustainable Development Goals is falling behind, threatening our shared promise to leave no one behind. The region is regressing on climate action, undermined by the impact of disasters and the continuing growth of greenhouse gas emissions. Fossil fuel subsidies and unsustainable production patterns hinder progress towards a sustainable economy. Persistent data gaps hinder a complete understanding of progress, leaving many vulnerable populations overlooked and out of the picture. Despite these challenges, there is reason for hope. Expanded access to mobile networks and investments in infrastructure and connectivity drive progress in industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Additionally, improvements in maternal, infant, and child health contribute to advances on good health and well-being. But the journey is far from over. Of the 169 targets, 50 cannot be assessed, and only 16 targets are on track to be achieved by 2030. Detailed data, particularly on disability, migration, and rural communities, remain limited. Community-driven data is becoming a beacon of hope for addressing critical data gaps, amplifying the voice of those historically excluded. Across the region, local partnerships are gathering vital information to illuminate the realities of those most at risk of being left behind. The grassroots approach empowers policymakers with the tools they need to better target resources and close the gaps. Partnerships between governments, communities, and development actors amplify local voices and leverage community insights. Achieving the SDGs requires bold action, driven by the people who know their challenges best. By investing in community-driven data and fostering collaboration, we can bridge gaps and ensure no one is left behind. Together, we can create a sustainable, equitable, and prosperous future for all.
Now, to present the key findings of the report, I would like to invite Ms. Rachel Bevan, the Director of Statistics Division of ESCAP, for her presentation. Please.
Thank you so much, Diane. Good morning, everyone here in the room, but also to all of those joining us online today. So it's my great pleasure to present to you the key highlights from the 2025 Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report, Engaging Communities to Close the Evidence Gap. This marks the 9th edition of our annual SDG Progress Report, a series that ESCAP has been producing since 2015 to track and accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals in our region. And this year we are especially proud to have collaborated with 5 United Nations agencies and 3 civil society organizations from across the region in producing this report. And their insights and contributions have really strengthened our collective effort to bridge data gaps and ensure that communities remain at the heart of our pursuit of sustainable development. So let me start with a few key messages from the report. Overall, progress on the 17 SDGs is off track. Most targets are either stagnating or advancing too slowly, meaning we're not moving at the pace needed to achieve our 2030 goals. On climate action, Goal 13, the region is not just slow, it's regressing. Instead of moving forward, we're seeing setbacks that threaten our collective efforts to combat climate change. Out of 117 targets where data is available, and that means where we have at least 2 data points, only 16 are on track and 18 are deteriorating. And these numbers make it clear that urgent action is needed. While our region outperforms the rest of the world on most SDGs, progress is slower in some key areas. We're lagging behind the global pace on decent work and economic growth, Goal 8, climate action, Goal 13, life below water, Goal 14, and partnerships for the goals, Goal 17. Stronger partnerships with local communities are essential in this effort. Communities provide valuable data that can complement official statistics, helping to measure progress in a more inclusive way and ensuring that no one is left behind. Achieving the SDGs, though, will require a transformation of our statistical systems. This means we need bold political leadership, increased investment, and stronger collaboration between governments, private sector, civil society, and others as well. Only through these collective efforts can we get back on track to achieve the SDGs. This snapshot here gives us a clear picture of our progress for the region on the 17 SDGs as we approach 2030. If you look at the vertical line on the chart, that's where we should be if we were on track. Ideally, all of the bars should have reached that line or moved even further across. But as you can see, that's not the case. There are some areas of progress, Goal 3 on good health and well-being, and Goal 9 on industry, innovation and infrastructure, and they've shown the most improvement. However, even with this progress, we're still moving too slowly to meet the targets by 2030. On the other hand, Goal 13 on climate action is not just lagging, it's regressing. So instead of advancing, we're losing ground, making it even harder to tackle the climate crisis. For Goal 5 on gender equality and Goal 16 on peace, justice and strong institutions, we don't have enough data to assess progress. So for all of the other goals, we are moving forward, but far too slowly. This year, we've also taken a closer look at how the Asia-Pacific region is progressing on the 17 SDGs compared to the rest of the world, using the same set of indicators and target values. And the results are mixed. On the majority of the goals, our region is outperforming the rest of the world, and those are the ones that you see highlighted here in green. That's encouraging and shows that the progress is being made. However, there are 4 goals where our region is significantly behind the rest of the world, and these are the ones highlighted in red. They're decent work and economic growth, Goal 8, climate action, Goal 13, life below water, Goal 14, and partnerships for the goals, Goal 17. When we assess progress now at the target level, we again see a very mixed picture. Now, I know you can't read all the detail here, but if you look at the colours, you can see that they tell the story very clearly. There are 117 targets where we have enough data to measure progress, and these are shown in red, amber and green. So starting with the good news, 16 of these targets, just a small fraction, are on track to meet the 2030 deadline. And these are the ones that you can see shown in green. But the rest of the picture is far more concerning. The amber targets indicate we're off track, and the red ones show that we're actually moving in the wrong direction. So of the 117 targets which we can measure, 86% are set to be missed by 2030. Even more alarming, 18 of the targets in red mean that they're not actually progressing at all. And then we have the grey, a third of all targets where we simply don't have enough data to assess progress. Now we're going to explore how data has the power, though, to transform lives. Because when we have the right data, we can make better decisions, drive meaningful change, and ensure that no one is left behind. And we'll look at 2 key questions. Firstly, what do the survey data reveal about inequalities? And this helps us to understand who is being left behind, but also why they're being left behind. And secondly, how can deeper engagement with communities help to fill critical data gaps? And we'll share how innovative approaches can be used to ensure that every voice is heard and counted. At ESCAP, we've conducted a detailed statistical analysis using our Leave No One Behind tool. And this looked at individual and household level survey data from across 30 countries in Asia and the Pacific. And the findings from this analysis, which focused on 12 key SDG indicators, reveal a clear pattern. Poverty as measured by the Household Wealth Index, and education level are the most significant factors driving inequality of opportunity. But these two factors do not exist in isolation. They often intersect with other circumstances, such as location, sex, and age, exacerbating disparities and making it even harder for the most vulnerable to access equal opportunities. However, while these survey data provide critical insights, they remain limited both in terms of coverage and frequency, and without more comprehensive and timely data, we're really only seeing part of the picture, making it difficult to fully understand and address inequalities. But the best way for us to understand and support the most left behind communities is by engaging with the people themselves. When we listen to their voices, work alongside them, and empower them with tools and knowledge, we gain valuable insights that can drive real change. This year, we've collaborated with UN agencies and civil society organizations to document successful community partnerships that are helping to bridge critical data gaps. From across 10 countries in our region, we've gathered 17 examples of good practices that highlight the power of community-driven data collection. These initiatives provide crucial insights into some of the most pressing issues, such as violence against women, quality of education, and climate change-induced displacement, while also shedding light on the challenges faced by marginalized groups, such as ethnic minorities, migrant populations, and those living in informal settlements. So let me share just one inspiring example from right here in Thailand. The Community Architects Network is an innovative cooperative of local architects, planners, and community leaders. And they train residents to map their own neighborhoods, giving them the skills to collect detailed real-time information about where and how they live. In Bangkok, residents of informal settlements use GPS devices and participatory mapping techniques to document their living conditions and their access to essential services. So what did they find? The data revealed serious gaps: inadequate sewage systems, limited access to clean water, and insufficient infrastructure. But more importantly, this information is now in the hands of policymakers who can use it to plan better services and directly address these pressing needs. This is just one example. In our full report, you'll find many more inspiring stories of how communities are taking charge, generating their own data, and using it to shape their future. So moving on, let's look in a little bit more detail about the availability of SDG data. Right now, as we heard, we've got 54% of indicators have 2 or more data points, and that is a slight improvement on last year. But whilst this is progress, it's still not enough to track trends effectively and make informed decisions. That said, our region is doing better than the global average, the rest of the world, which stands at 48%. When we take a closer look at where the most significant data gaps exist, some key trends emerge. The Asia-Pacific region faces a major data shortfall in 2 critical areas: Goal 5, gender equality, and Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And these gaps make it harder to measure progress and drive meaningful change in these essential areas. In addition, data availability remains particularly low for Goal 14, life below water, Goal 13, climate action, and Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. These are all crucial for sustainable development, yet we lack the data needed to fully understand and tackle these challenges. Compared to other goals, though, data availability is higher for Goal 7, clean energy, Goal 17, partnerships for the goals, and Goal 15, life on land. And that gives us a stronger foundation to build on as we work towards achieving these targets. But to meet the data gap, statistical systems need to transform and become more agile and inclusive to provide the necessary evidence to achieve the SDGs for everyone. They must harness rapid technological advancements to keep pace with the rising demands for information by modern societies. The Power of Data High Impact Initiative, launched at the 2023 SDG Summit outlines 3 key elements needed to transform statistical systems. Firstly, we need to build strong political leadership. We need leaders who foster collaboration across all stakeholders, government agencies, civil society, private sector, and academia, to create robust and inclusive statistical systems. Secondly, we need to mobilize more resources. The share of total financial resources available globally to strengthen statistical capacities in developing countries has almost halved since 2015. And thirdly, we need to strengthen partnerships. The call for a whole-of-society approach by the ESCAP Committee on Statistics held last year requires new data partnerships that enable communities, civil society, the private sector, and the research community to actively participate in the design, production, and use of statistics. This report, though, is more than just an update on progress. It also serves as a gateway to deeper insights. And for those seeking detailed country-specific analysis of the SDG indicators, I'd encourage you to explore our Asia-Pacific SDG Gateway. This newly revamped gateway offers interactive visualizations, dynamic dashboards, and powerful tools to track SDG progress and data gaps across the region. ESCAP is also supporting countries in this endeavour, and we're implementing our national SDG tracker tool in over 20 countries, strengthening their SDG monitoring efforts. So I invite you all to take advantage of this valuable platform and explore how data-driven insights can drive real impact in our collective journey towards sustainable development. So I'm pleased to share that this report is now available through this link and also on the QR code. And thank you all for your time and attention. And I just encourage you all to explore the platform, look at the data, and join us in driving meaningful progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bevan. Today we have a special guest, Ms. Gita Sabarwal, United Nations Resident Coordinator in Indonesia, who will be sharing her takeaways from the report and how a whole-of-society approach, big data, among others, will play a crucial role in bolstering progress. So, Ms. Gita, please.
Thanks, Diane. Thanks, Lynn, Rachel, and Arman. It's before I start, Swadika, and what in Indonesia we say Selamat Pagi, and a very good morning to everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be back here in Bangkok. I spent 4 wonderful years working in very close partnership with government in advancing sustainable development, climate action, and inclusion in line with SDGs. And I see many familiar faces here, and it's great to be reconnecting. As you know, a robust evidence base, as both Lynn and Rachel pointed out, is extremely critical for SDG acceleration. ESCAP's contribution in many ways is exemplified through this SDG annual report, which brings to bear cutting-edge expertise while using quantitative and qualitative data. So let me thank Rachel for unpacking the report for us this morning. These findings help deepen analysis for the 17 goals, and it also enables informed and targeted policy making, which is critical for fast-tracking SDGs. I would like to share 3 takeaways from my perspective as the resident coordinator. First, the SDG progress snapshot, this one, just to remind you all, this snapshot, to me is extremely critical. It's critical to inform our dialogue as resident coordinators with policymakers and political leaders. I used it a lot when I was the resident coordinator here in Thailand, and I continue to use it with political leaders in Indonesia. It helps political leaders and policymakers to understand at a glance where acceleration is needed, right? In many ways, I call it idiot proof, right? It's extremely useful. It's an extremely useful strategic tool. Second, and as Rachel pointed out, For the Asia Pacific, we know that 10 of the goals of the 17 outperform all other regions in the world. The goal that requires maximum acceleration that both Lynn and Rachel pointed out is goal 13. To me, that was a little surprising. It was surprising because we are seeing greater intent by governments across Asia Pacific to scale up emission reductions. Yet, we aren't moving fast enough. And it is this lack of progress that highlights the urgency. And this is especially critical in the context of the run-up to COP30, where all governments are going to be presenting their new, more ambitious climate action plans to move faster and further to carbon neutrality. 3, the SDGs end in 2030, and yet as a region, we continue to lack data for goal 5 and goal 16. You know, both Lynn and Rachel pointed it out. We are 2/3 of the way, and yet we are lacking data, right? And these are the two goals where we need added action, for which, or we need acceleration, for which we need clarity of progress, and we don't have data. This is where the UN custodian agencies will need to come together to work in close partnership with government to see how to fill this data gap. Importantly, progress on SDGs is impossible without a whole of society approach. This is why the inclusion of community perspectives into the SDG report adds a very important new dimension. And the one that I like best, it builds off, Rachel, the example that you picked up of informal settlements. It's this community-driven Know Your City initiative around Asia Pacific region, which collects citizens-led data to identify needs of the poorest urban residents. And I understand they again use GPS in Delhi, and they are trying to map locations which are dark, which do not have street lights. And now that has become part of official statistics, which is improving nighttime safety. And I know, Rachel pointed out the example from Bangkok. There are a number of cities across Asia Pacific that are using GPS and other big data techniques to map informal settlements. This shows how community-generated data can not only bridge gaps in official statistics, but also capture SDG progress and how it affects people's lives. You know, it's that granularity that you need of the impact in real terms. That is what the community perspective brings to bear. ESCAP is also bolstering statistical systems by leveraging the Big Data Hub for Asia Pacific in support of the SDGs. I believe big data and machine learning can be used to scale up in real time information to track SDG progress. This includes assessing current rice production rates based on satellite imagery and analyzing mobile positioning data to measure tourist numbers as part of compiling official statistics. I've seen both of this in Indonesia, happen in Indonesia, right? Where we are, and through ESCAP is working very closely with FAO to track rice production, which tells you exactly when you need to import rice. At what time does the country need to import rice, right? This is where the future of statistics lies, given that 1/5 of the SDG indicators can be measured through big data. However, leveraging machine learning for analyzing vast data sets that are generated through big data will require upskilling of statisticians, data scientists, and community and computing analysts. To that end, ESCAP is building the capacity of national statistics officers on machine learning and big data across the region. I hope you find this report useful in understanding how we can leverage big data and new forms of gathering community perspectives to speed up progress on SDGs. At the UN, we really value the partnership with the media, and we look forward to continuing to work closely with you. So thank you very much, Terima kasih, and Khap Khun Kap.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gita, for these remarks and bringing us a bit more of the country experience and how you use it to monitor progress in Indonesia, especially with these examples of using data. I would like to move now to the next and final part of our morning today, which is the Q&A. And we will open the floor here in person, also online, for those who wish to ask questions. And perhaps we will take a few questions from the floor first, and then I'll hand over to the panelists. So please, we have a microphone in the back, but also if you prefer to have a microphone taken to you, you also can raise your hand, and my colleague will help you. So please.
Thank you.
And also, if you can introduce yourself and the organization that you represent before you ask your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, Sawadee Khap. My name is Imtiaz Maqbool. I'm the executive editor of Travel Impact Newswire. I actually cover the travel and tourism industry, but I've been following ESCAP for many years. Firstly, thank you very much for coming back to the Foreign Correspondents Club every year. We really appreciate the support and the value that you all place in your relationships with the media. I just had two very realistic questions. What is the impact of the Trump administration's actions on the SDGs? The administration is pulling the US out of many of the UN agencies, and also most of the policymakers in this part of the world these days have moved into very much into a reactive mode in terms of wondering what's going to happen next with being hit by the tariffs or aid cuts or various other things. So being very realistic, with only 4 or 5 years left, and this is going to be the crucial period of the Trump administration, how badly do you think the actions of the Trump administration will have on meeting these SDG goals in what's left of the target period? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. Is there any other question from the floor? We will take a few questions and then we will answer. No worries. The questions will not be mixed up. Can we have a microphone here?
Abhichai, retired person, but I have worked for the UN for a while. Gita would know. I was working with ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations based in Jakarta. So I've always been very interested. You have a Southeast Asian, right, snapshot too, right? Interestingly, this year's report shows that it has always been regressing on climate action, goal 13. And this year shows a marked improvement, actually move into the positive realm. Okay? I think it's even one of the best among the South sub-regional snapshots. So I was wondering what happened. How come there's this quantum leap from red to blue, and very significantly, it's now the leader among all the sub-regionals. Is there something actually happening on the ground that caused this shift? Or is there something to do with the statistics? So this is just my question. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one more question here from the back. After this question, then we'll turn to the panel, and then I'll take other questions.
My name is Chersak Virapat. I'm the Regional Director for Asia of the International Emergency Management Society. I read your report, I think 2024. I think it's similar to this year. And I look forward to work with ESCAP, especially on the ground. So I'd like to ask, how can we work with you after this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So turning to the panel now, we have 3 questions. Maybe we could start with Ms. Lin Yan.
Thank Thank you for all of those questions. I think many of you and must have been interested in particular the first one, right? And first of all, I would like to refer you to the statement by the UN Secretary General on the January 27th regarding the pause on US foreign assistance. So I will read loudly and verbatim. So the Secretary General notes with concern the announcement of a pause in US foreign assistance. Second message, the Secretary General calls for additional exemptions to be considered to ensure the continued delivery of critical development and humanitarian activities for the most vulnerable communities around the world whose lives and livelihood depend on this support. Third para, the Secretary General looks forward to engaging with the new United States administration on the provision of much needed development support to people grappling with the most difficult challenges confronting the developing world. The United States is one of the largest aid providers, and it's vital that we work constructively to jointly shape a strategic path forward. I believe the messages are quite clear. And zooming to our region, the Asia-Pacific region, the gentleman asked about what will be the impact on the Asia-Pacific. I also would like to share, and through the data, right, the SDG Progress Report, and also we have our another flagship report is the World Economic Survey, which is coming out in April. But according to the past few surveys, as we witness that Asia Pacific has been one of the most resilient regions, right? We all know that from the pandemic, the latest, and back to the 1990s. So Asia Pacific has been the most resilient region in the world. When we look at our region, I think there are a few factors we need to look at. What is the aspiration of the region, of the people of the region? We see two keywords. One is resilience, the other one is growth. Resilience part, as I'm afraid I don't need to elaborate that much. Our region is the most disaster-prone region in the world, right? Where we saw last year, the extreme weathers and the landslides, the droughts and the floods happening in many countries in our region. We suffer a lot. And however, to survive and thrive, and we achieve all of those progress through the growth. Right now, Asia Pacific is exploring a new path of growth that is more inclusive and more sustainable. And at the same time, in the past decade, if we look at the region, we see two clear buffers in the region. One is the Asia Pacific, the integration of the region. I can give you a few numbers so that to better explain. The key trends in the region is the growing intra-regional trade. And the intra-regional trade accounted for over half of the region's total exports and imports in 2024. At the same time, and the Asia-Pacific region has shown increasing leadership in trade agreements that incorporate digital trade and sustainability measures. One of our participants asked ASEAN's progress. Maybe my colleagues can elaborate, but it will give a sense also in this regard. So in 2022, Asia Pacific accounted for a quarter of the global digitally deliverable service, and the digital finance is about to grow by 7% by 2026. So this gives us a sense of a regional integration. At the same time, I think this report also tells us another secret, I would say buffer, that is a multi-layered partnership, multi-leveled, multi-layered partnership, and how to accelerate progress. There are many examples given here, and that is why we as ESCAP, part of the UN organization, is promoting the whole of a government and the whole of a society approach. The partnership at different levels, different layers, finally will give us the buffer zone. I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your question. I'll respond to the question on Southeast Asia progress. And of course, data must show what is on the ground, right? They shouldn't be different. And every year we update the progress assessment for all of the subregions based on the most recent data available. And sometimes you have to remember that these data are not necessarily for the current year. There is a lag in terms of the most recent data we have and 2024. And sometimes historical data are being also revised and or adjusted. That's why the comparability with previous years is not exact in that sense. But in terms of the Southeast Asia progress on Goal 13, obviously the new data shows that the sub-region, in terms of the impact of natural disaster on economy and population, it continues to increase. But finally, we can see that the total greenhouse gas emission in this sub-region started to decline, and more countries are adopting disaster risk reduction policies and strategies at the national and sub-national level. So these are the main reasons why, relative to other sub-regions, Southeast Asia shows a better progress on Goal 13. But one thing we have to remember is that evidence is still lacking on this goal. What we see is a partial picture and partial reality. There is a lot of data gap on the Goal 13 across sub-regions.
And then taking the third question, so thank you for that. In terms of how we can work together, maybe we can talk bilaterally afterwards and go into that in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the floor? Yes, please.
Hey, thanks. My name is Vicky. I'm coming from the private sector working in the regional sustainability. It was a great report I have to, because every year we will review our own sustainability targets and strategy. And the SDG is always sort of like the keystone that we will use for our own reflection. And it was great that we have all these indicators available. I think coming from the private sector, one of my questions would be, we have so many goals, but sometimes in private sector, we sort of have to prioritize some of them, but keep the rest for maybe for the future. I don't know if this is the way, like you guys looking at it, or does different goals that are not making enough progress, they carry the same weights given the Asian Pacific region context, or they're equally important? Because I think there will be a great information for us in private sector to make our own decisions every year and how to read and how to use for our future roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, please.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Konstantinos Balis. I work in Thailand. I am the Deputy Head of Sustainable Development at a local Thai university. It's called Ratchapat University. There are 38, maybe the Thai people are aware of that. I'm responsible for data collection regarding the SDGs for various sustainable development rankings. And my question, as well as other fellow academics and researchers, are what do we do with all the data that we have as local universities that focus on local development, and how or if we can somehow share the data with you when it comes to those big reports. It's not just coming from Thailand, it's coming from the Philippines, it's coming from researchers in Vietnam, that also have that same question. Nobody asks us for data, so we are not sure how we can support this report. So that's my question, how we as the academia can help. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, let's take one more question, a gentleman over there.
Okay, so it's Virapat from Teams again. I know that when we address SDG, we look at the locally, not only rural area, but also urban area. I like to say that last year, at the UN General Assembly, the World Rural Development Day has been established and observed by the UN. I look forward that ESCAP would take this platform for working with rural people. The World Rural Development Day is on the 6th of July each year from now. So I hope that you can take a look in detail. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me hand over now to the panel for these 3 questions. And then we can take maybe a few more if we have time.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Diane. I would like to respond to the first question. First of all, allow me to express deep appreciation again to the questions asked, because we see really a very wide range of questions being asked, and also from different stakeholders, from private sector, from academic cycle, and also from our rural representative. So that shows that, right, we really echoing what we are discussing today. In terms of the private sector, I think the question you ask is very relevant and also very broad as well, how to prioritize. What makes the SDG different from the MDGs, and the one outstanding feature of its interlinkaged nature, and also, right, we are not looking at one goal, one target by itself. We look at the interlinkages, how the implementation or the regression of one goal will have the impact on the others, might either accelerate or decelerate. So that is something we always need to bear in mind, and to avoid those siloed approach, to look at the goals and the targets. And the cross-cutting nature, cross-sectoral approach, and the interlinkages approach is the important way to look at the whole SDGs. Second is about this report itself. As you can tell, that this here is basically covered several layers: the global, right, global progress, regional progress, national progress, as well as subnational efforts. So that will also give us a kind of a flavor how to look at SDG implementation and the efforts at the different levels. We can have a comparison, and then we know at the regional level what are the most outstanding issues and the challenges. I think in the report, I don't know exactly what it is this page, but it has a figure 1.3. It targets showing the negative trends. So if at the regional level we saw some warnings or concerning trends, that means we need to further strengthen the regional collaboration and cooperation to tackle those challenges. At the national level, of course, that is really up to the national priorities, how they, take into account the national context, right, to prioritize. So, but at the global level and the regional level, it indeed requires collaborative approach and international cooperation and international collaboration to address those challenges in commonalities. Yeah, I will stop here. And the last but not least, I would like to encourage private sector and also highly commend the private sector's role. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, we are going to have the fourth financing for development conference in Spain very soon in June. So the last one was in 2015 in Addis Ababa, right? So we have the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, we call it AAAA. From that milestone, AAAA, it gave the private sector the mandate and the framework to work in the area of financing for development. So I encourage all the private sectors to engage and contribute in this process. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I'm reflecting on the question on what universities can do with their data. Thank you for the question. Actually, the main objective of the second chapter in this report is to provide some sort of models of partnership between universities, UN, and communities to either generate data or use data they already have. I'll give you two examples. For instance, in the Philippines, to better understand the climate-induced displacement situation, it's not only universities in the Philippines, AIT and Philippines university scientists have worked together to develop a kind of a measurement framework, and International Organization for Migration has facilitated this kind of joint activity. In Indonesia, UNICEF has facilitated a kind of engagement with university students to train them and build capacity in order to collect data from the communities on understanding the access to safely managed sanitation system. There are a few more of this kind of examples from the second chapter, which each will provide you a different kind of model. So the focus on this chapter is the procedure. It's not necessarily the data they have generated, because we understand there is a lot happening and we would like to harness those capacity and the data available at the academia. Thank you.
On the World Rural Day, well, we can take a look at that and see what we could do. Have some further discussions on that. But at the moment, I'm not quite sure, so we'll have to look at that. But certainly, as we know, as the report highlights, we know that the needs of rural areas are very different to urban areas. So it is extremely important we make sure we're kind of capturing both and looking at how we can make sure that we're engaging with those different communities. So thank you.
Thank you. We have a few more minutes. Maybe we can squeeze in a few questions. So, a gentleman over here had the hand before, so please. Yes.
Sawadee Cap. Robert Kinnear, Alternative Innovations. I lived here for over 30 years until 5 years ago when I departed, planned prior to COVID. But I've just come back and done a 10-week tour around my old favorite diving areas of in Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And I was overwhelmed by the change in the development on beachfronts. So my question basically is what impact is tourism having on all your goals? Because tourism seems to impact every area in terms of construction, destruction of environments. Instead of being a beach, sea, beach and jungle, it's sea, beach and concrete, 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 then eventually jungle again. And just the mass tourism and construction with all the pollution that's created and the movement of the expanding tourist population. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. Yes, maybe we can take one more here from the floor. Here.
Thank you. Pierre from Solidarity Center, Thailand. So we work with trade union and we work for like workers' rights and freedom of association in the country. So I'd like to thank you for the great presentation and the snapshot. I think it's really good. Like it provides like which goals that we are on progress, which goals that we on progress, but may not achieve like the target by 2030, and also like interestingly, some goals such as climate action that we actually on regress. So my question is, it's good to see, especially the one that likely we're not gonna succeed, we're not gonna reach the target, but has there been like a like practical plan for the one that we're not gonna achieve, just to try to like, to change it, to make it achieved by 2030, because we work with trade union, we work with labor movement in the country. It's not surprising to us that decent work is one of the worst, like not the worst, like climate action worst, but decent work that's related to lack of recognition of core labor standard in the country is one of the worst. So we like to offer help, we like to offer assistance. So I ask practical plan to improve this.
Thank you. Yes, how to address the issues, right? Maybe if I can add one more question. I see from online, actually, my colleagues are sharing with me, there's quite many questions, and I'm afraid we cannot address all of them today because of time. But I think maybe we could add one, because I see repetitive questions here coming in on how do we see the same kind of picture for each country in the region. So there's questions from Philippines asking how is the Philippines doing? And there's a question from Thailand asking how is Thailand progressing on the SDGs? So perhaps we could ask also the panel here on from a country's perspective, how can we also analyze and track progress on the SDGs?
Thank you. So if I take the first question, I think Lynn will take the second, and then Arman the third, if that's okay. So thank you for raising the issue about tourism, about what you actually saw. That's actually, as we look at Goal 14, Life Below Water, it's one where we don't have good evidence. So there is not enough data that we actually would really need to be able to measure these things. So we have been working with the other UN agencies, particularly with UN Tourism Organization. So we did hold a training event last year to help a number of the national statistical offices to look at how we can better measure this particular area. And there is a new framework for measuring sustainable tourism as well. But it is one of those areas that definitely needs more work in terms of the measurement side for us to be able to really look at it. It also will be something, I think, as well, that will be covered in the new system of national accounts and the update this year, which will involve more on how we kind of look at the issues around environmental accounting as well. But we can talk about that again more afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you for the question from the trade union, right? What are the practical plans? And I think from our view, we see that all of those issues have been identified. And wherever we go, we always first mention, right, the most challenging issues for our region. I believe also many participants mentioned the regional context as well as the national context, right? For our region, we see right now clearly there are few megatrends really having a bigger impact. For example, the climate change, right, and the natural disasters. Second is the very complex energy transition. I believe the trade union also feels that as well. Third one is the demographic shift. On one hand, we have roughly about half of the world youth still residing in our region, but the 500, a little bit over 100 million people already aged over 60 or even older. So those are the situation our region is facing. And the last but not least, the rapid technology advancement. All of those four megatrends are intertwined and will have a bigger impact also on the workers regarding their upskill and reskill, regarding the skill transfer, right? Regarding the informal workers, how they can get formalized into the sectors. And we cannot talk about the solutions without looking at all of those intertwined nature of those mega trends. So I think in my opening remarks, I also mentioned that all the policy recommendations are there. Political leadership, political will. Second, evidence-based, data-based policy making, right? Today with us, only supported by data. If we look at the goals 8, we look in a very clear way, right? What is the gray area? What is the red area? And by looking through this evidence and data-based approach, we can go to the root of the questions and come up with the solutions. But overall, I think still back to my point, one sector cannot tackle the issue by itself, and one stakeholder cannot tackle the issue by himself. It has to be a holistic approach. From UN side, we will try our best to provide more integrated policy support as well to the government and foster regional collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm reflecting on the question on national progress. I would like to invite you to visit Asia Pacific SDG Gateway. As Rachel mentioned, we have revamped this gateway with lots of analysis and interactive dashboards. So what you will not see exactly the same analysis that we are doing at the regional level, which is assessing progress against targets, because national targets are different, and for each country they have their own priorities and their own targets, and the monitoring SDGs implementation is primarily national responsibilities, government responsibilities. But what we do on the gateway, we provide analysis on the trends, on SDG indicators, so you can see how countries are moving on each indicator and on which direction. We are comparing, for each indicator, comparing countries' level of achievement with the regional averages as well, so that you can see, and combining this information, you can identify for your country what are the emerging challenges, what are the persisting challenges, what are the progresses you're making, so that makes prioritization easier for countries. So there's a lot more information on the gateway, and I invite you to explore it by yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious of the time, so I think even though we're having a very good and lively discussion, which I would like to continue, but because we're already over time, I think we can close now and perhaps ask for final remarks from Ms. Rachel Bevan, please.
Thank you so much. I just wanted the opportunity to say thank you so much. Thank you to everyone, not just for being here, but also online, but really for engaging with us, for sharing your questions, but also reflections. Certainly, I know we've got a bit of time afterwards in the room, so it'll be great to engage even more. And we know that really in this room, we're kind of, it's great to see such wide participation, which I think is what we really wanted to encourage through the report. We talked about a whole of society approach, but we've really got that in the room today, where we have people from the different kind of sectors, so from governments, from different countries, from private sector, from civil society, but also academia as well as the private sector. So that's really been great to hear the different questions and to be able to engage with you more. As Armand just said as well, do please look at the report, but do also go onto the online platform to delve into it in more detail. And please also, if you have other questions, I know we haven't been able to necessarily get to all of them today, but please get in touch with us, ask us afterwards, and we will try and do what we can as well. Let me also just say a huge thank you to the team led by Armand. I know it's always a huge effort to produce a report like this, so we really do appreciate all of your team's effort bringing it all together, as well as to all of our partners who've also helped in that, and to, of course, to our resident coordinator here today for sharing your reflections and for all of you to be here. So thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
So Thank you. So this is the end of the session. For those here that brave the bad weather to reach the FCCT, you'll be rewarded with some refreshments. And if you, as Rachel says, if you'd like to stay and have conversations with us as well, very welcome to discuss more. Thank you all.